Hello, and welcome back to the Quantum Health Connection podcast. I'm your host, Vanessa Bolden, with my incredible co-host, Heather Crimson. And today we have Daniel from BlockBlueLight. He is a powerhouse. He has a company where he has all kinds of wonderful products that you guys definitely have to go check out. Daniel is a visionary leader in the field of blue light and its effect on human health. And he's the founder and CEO of BlockBlueLight, a premier global brand for blue light, for blue and artificial light blocking products. And he's made his mission to promote and educate behind the science of this phenomena, such as digital eye strain, poor sleep, and the connection between the overuse of these. So he is a powerhouse. We are so excited to have him and chat with him. So Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Vanessa. Yeah, happy to be here. Really looking forward to diving into all things around light and health.
Yeah, awesome. We're really excited about that too.
Mm-hmm. As we know, necessity is the mother of invention. So it sounds like you came across this field organically just because you were experiencing your own health problems, right? And so you started to maybe hear about or discover that there were ways that you could mitigate artificial light and then address what you were going through. Yeah?
Yeah, well, I mean, I came across this field before it was actually a field. Back in sort of like 2014, the concept of blocking blue light or blue light glasses or any of that didn't really exist. We were kind of at the infancy of the digital age. Not many people had digital devices. LED lighting wasn't the main kind of light source in our homes, but I mean, artificial light did exist and the problems did exist, but I don't think it existed to the extent that we have today. So myself, 10 years ago, it caused a problem for myself. I started working and started my career in the corporate world. So that led to me kind of working under artificial lights all day, on screens all day, and then going home and actually having to do work out of hours at like 11 p.m. at night, given I was kind of like the new guy, the graduate, sort of just trying to start out his career. You get lumped with that kind of work. And like for myself, like I always found myself prior to that being extremely into health and wellness and doing the things I thought were what keep you healthy, which is move, exercise, and eat well, right? And that's all you've got. If you do those things, you will be healthy. And I was like, well, I'm doing those things, and now I'm not healthy. And at that time, I actually thought, oh, maybe I'm not doing those things enough. Like maybe I need to exercise more, and maybe I need to eat better. Like actually making it worse, right? But yeah, I mean, ultimately, what happened to me was I started my career, started to put myself into extremely different light environments to what we should be exposed to, or what our biology is supposed to receive, and be around and be more aligned with natural light cycles. I was very disconnected from that, which ultimately led me within the space of about 6 weeks to have severe insomnia, where I could only sleep about 2 to 3 hours a night, and severe migraine attacks during the day. And I did what most people would do when they're not feeling well. As I went to my doctor, my GP, and I asked them, they like help me, like, what's going on? I can't sleep. I've got all these health problems. But what I learned through that, which I wasn't quite aware of then, was that system isn't designed to like look at the root cause or like work out what's going wrong with you. It's designed to like try and band-aid the symptoms. And in my case, that's what they tried to do with a whole host of cocktail of different prescription medications, from sleeping tablets to antipsychotic medications, antidepressants. They just keep throwing the kitchen sink at me, like going, well, this doesn't work, let's try this. That doesn't work, try this. And ultimately what that led to was almost a year of just suffering and things ultimately getting worse. Like every time I got a new medication, it just, it's like, oh yeah, like you still didn't sleep well, and then you felt drugged out during the day. Like, so like the ability to function became very, very difficult. And then it got to the point where I remember the day I went back to my doctor. I was like, this hasn't worked either. And ultimately they sort of just put their hands in the air and said, oh, well, I think there's nothing wrong with you. It's in your head. Like you are internally creating this problem that we can't find anything wrong with you. And I just thought that was crazy. I was like, there is something wrong with me. Like I was fine and now I'm not. And So at that point I was like, well, I've got to change what I'm doing here, because this isn't going to work if I just keep going back. And ultimately the expert's telling me that there's nothing wrong when I know there is. So that I had to take my health into my own hands, right? And so I started to do a lot of research. But 10 years ago, the wealth of knowledge, or the accessibility of knowledge, wasn't as easy as it is today. Like podcasts like this didn't exist, right? So it was very difficult to try and even just find where to start, even though the internet existed. Just it was still quite difficult. But I was quite persistent. I'm quite a stubborn person. I refuse to accept like this is like how life needs to be. So that led me to trawling the internet, and I stumbled upon a neurosurgeon in the US called Dr. Jack Kruse. And he was talking about some interesting concepts that really got my attention, because what he was talking about was very, very different to what everyone else was talking about. Now, everyone I followed at the time, and everyone that I got my knowledge around health and wellness, he was saying very, very different things, which was not talking about like what diet you should be on, whether it's like the paleo diet or the ketogenic diet or this low carb, high carb, all that sort of stuff. He's like, all these people are arguing over something that doesn't actually really matter if you're not getting the layer above that correct. And he's saying ultimately that the way health is governed, your biology is governed through light, and doesn't matter really what you eat. Well, it does to a degree, but it doesn't matter if you're not getting your light environments right, because you'll never be healthy. And there's a quote that he had. It was like, health is about light, not food, right? Like, it's like, but we're also focused on this, and no one's talking, or everyone's just ignoring this, the big thing over here. And I found that very, very interesting. And I was like, I'm just going to like deep dive into this, go down a whole bunch of rabbit holes and try and work out first of all, what he's talking about, because he's very technical, and like, it's like here's like long blog posts, and it's like, I don't know what you're talking about here, but like, I was very, very keen to understand it and work out practical applications on obviously what the takeaways are and what I need to do here. And so ultimately I started to play around with light, and I was like, okay, well, let's look at the light environments I'm working in, living in. And so the big thing I started to do, first of all, was like look at my daytime environment. I was like, I can't go and work outside. I'm trying to make a living. I've got a career to build. So like, I can't change my environment, but what can I do to sort of use tools and techniques to mitigate it? And back then, 10 years ago, the concept of blue light glasses, companies like ours, didn't exist. But there was like a brand of safety glasses that you could buy that would mitigate blue light. And I was like, but they didn't even exist. And I was living in Australia at the time. They didn't exist there. So I found them on Amazon in the US. I ordered them over to Australia. I started playing with them during the day in the office. Like, people were like, who is this guy? Like, he's wearing these crazy glasses. Like, but I mean, I'm desperation, right? Like, I didn't actually care at this point. I was like, I just want to get like, I just want to get better. So I started playing around with them. I started going outside. Everyone would go out for like smoke breaks. So I was like, I'm going for my like light break. I'll just go outside, get some natural light exposure during the day. I was very, very cautious about what I was doing in the evening. And I just started to consume information and then apply the knowledge I learned. And within the space of a couple of weeks, I was already starting to see positive changes, the first time ever. And then within the space of a couple of months, I completely reversed my insomnia, completely reversed migraines, and completely reversed what I'd say was the hormonal disruption or dysregulation of like 12 months of sleep deprivation. And at that point, I was like, how did I spend a year of like going to doctors, trying all these like advanced medications and stuff, when the answer was go outside and wear a $20 pair of glasses at 10 times? Like, so basic, right?
It's almost hard for people to believe that it could be that simple.
Yeah.
It is so profound and turned your situation around so quickly.
Yeah. But that was at that point, I was like, I'm not like living this really different life to so many people. Like, there's got to, like, I'm not the only one. Like, so that's why I was like, well, people will probably go through what I go through, but they probably get to that point where they just probably put their hands up and go, well, okay, that's just how I have to live. Like, there is no solution here, or I just have to continue taking this medication to mask the symptoms and move on with life and just accept a new level of like how I function and how I feel, right? And that becomes the normal, like, because humans are really, really good at adapting to environments and just normalizing it. And like, I refused to accept that. So, but then I was like, I've got so much, like, I just really want to share this with other people so they don't have to accept that sort of that's the way that they need to function. So at the time, I had no desire to start a business. I didn't know what I was doing or anything, but I was like, I'm just going to order another 20 pairs of these glasses off Amazon, and I'm going to stand up a website, and I'm just going to start to write a blog and educate, tell my story, try to tell people about like the problem and what the solution is. And in 2015, I'm going to be honest, not a lot of people wanted to listen because they're like, this guy
Even
is
now,
nuts.
people don't want to listen. So I can't imagine how it was back then, because people, when I say it now, they think I'm crazy, and it's a lot more mainstream, but it's like, I can't imagine how the resistance then. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I love today. Like, I feel like, well, I know where it was 10 years ago, and I'm like, at least there's a lot more open-minded people around the idea of it. But back
Definitely.
then it was challenging. Like, and I thought like, oh no, I've got this great idea. Like, okay, I don't have to try and even educate the end consumer. I'm going to go to like naturopaths and like functional medicine doctors, and like none of them even wanted to listen to me. Like, I just remember like trying to outreach emails, like just
That's
like
so disappointing though, because that's kind of exactly what happened to me, because I really related to your story, because I had chronic insomnia as one of my things, and chronic pain and chronic depression. And the solution was see the sunrise and block blue light at night, lo and behold. But I had gone to the medical community, just like you, the same gaslighting. Oh, you just have to take the antidepressants. Oh, there's no help. The exact same story. It's like literally the exact same thing. And then I had gone to the naturopaths and the functional medicine doctor, and their solution was tryptophan and melatonin. They never once said about my light environment. And it's like, if we could educate those people, right, so they're aware of this information, that's going to help, of course, make this way more mainstream. But then people are going to get help. Like, they're going to get the help that they need and get your light, your blue blockers and the things, and help themselves.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, that's kind of, I think what's quite cool to see today is that it has the awareness around this has started to expand further and further out into different groups of people and expertise, where it's like not such a, what I'd say, such a challenge to just get people to understand the concept where it was 10 years ago. And but also I think the need for these, like what we do and around the education and the products and the solutions, that need has evolved significantly. Like, when I started doing this, like, not everyone had a smartphone. Like, there wasn't LED lighting in all our homes. Like, it was like the iPhone 2 and like tablets and devices and street headlights, car headlights. All these things have slowly evolved and like infiltrated our lifestyles, where now it's like near impossible to get away from it, right? Like, we live in a world where we are now artificially lit by LED light sources, and it's everywhere.
Explain the difference maybe for people who are listening. I mean, the car lamps, forget it. They can't even take them. Like, they're ridiculous. They're so blue. But explain the difference of what the change in the lighting has been and why that's an issue, right? Because we used to use more incandescence and more halogen, and now people use more like LED enriched blue, and why that's more of a problem.
Yeah, so I mean, if we just go back sort of, it's like 10 to 15 years ago. Prior to that, the primary light sources and everything was what we call a heat source style lighting, which is incandescent and halogen. And the big difference between those two is the way that the light is generated through a halogen or incandescent lighting is there's a filament of some sort, whether it's slightly different than halogen and incandescent, but the idea is that the electricity heats the filament and it produces light, but it also produces a lot of heat. and heat in the way of infrared light, which is actually very, very beneficial. And a lot of red light. It is a full spectrum of light. It has relatively low blue and green light, which is actually very, very good for us in the evening. It's very, very much more aligned with what types of light we should be having in the evening. But with inefficiency, it creates a lot of energy inefficiency because it puts out a lot of non-visible light. And we're using, well, we've been told that we should have we're using light for just to be able to visually see. We're not really looking at the therapeutic effects of the non-visual light. Right. So in the name of sustainability, it's been pushed to find solutions where the efficiency of the light is purely based on visible light. Not so that starts to mean, well, how do we create a light source that doesn't actually produce infrared light and doesn't produce a lot of the long wavelength red light? Because if you look at what they call is like, this is what we've been pushed towards, is like how many, so per 1 watt of light, which watts is like the energy consumption, how much lumens do you get off it? How much brightness do you get off it? And so you'll see pushing it around like you need to have an Energy Star rating on everything now, right? So you got it, and the way they measure that is going, so per watt, how much lumens of light do you get? Well, if you're using short wavelength light, e.g. blue light, you can get a lot more lumens per watt. Right. And so our lighting is actually deemed really inefficient because we don't use blue light. We actually strip out the blue light, but it isn't actually energy inefficient. We still use the same wattage. It just doesn't blast you with such bright white / blue light. But that's been the push everywhere as well. You've got to get an A rating for energy efficiency, right? So, and that's infiltrated everything that's a light source, from car headlights to street lights, yep, to the light in your fridge, to LED billboards, to everything. So there's been a big push around sustainability. Energy consumption is like, we've got to make sure it's sustainable for the earth, for the planet. But one big thing they've left off this is like, yep, good for the planet, the earth, but what about the life form, not just humans, because it actually affects everything from plants to insects to animals. What about them on this, living on it? It's actually making them very sick and very unhealthy because it's a very alien type of light that isn't actually biologically appropriate for us, causing a whole host of chronic disease and problems. So that's kind of the world we're living in today. And I mean, that's what we're now trying to look at. How can we still live in the modern world, still have all the great tools and technology, but how can we actually create different tools and technologies to mitigate the effects of that? So, we can still live and operate and function. We don't have to go out into the middle of nowhere in camp without any electricity. And there are ways to do it, right? And that's kind of what we're here to, that's kind of our mission as a business, is to allow us to live in the modern world around all this artificial light.
Right, so we can be in the modern world if we are aware of what is the danger of artificial blue light versus natural blue light. Your company name, BlockBlueLight. So help our listeners understand, Daniel, like, why should we care about blue light at all? What's the difference? And yes, the lighting has changed. We've lost the warm tones of the red and infrared, but why should people care if their fridges have these lights, or you know what I mean? It's like all around them. They probably don't even think about it, right? So what's the big deal?
Yeah, well, I think a place to start is what I alluded to before, is light governs our biology, right? So, and that's the biggest light source is the sun. So not all blue light is bad. That's probably one thing to say, is like, even though our company's called BlockBlueLight, there are times of the day where you don't want to block blue light. And so ultimately, light cycles, the consumption, if we look at nature and the light cycles of the sun, ultimately they change based on the time in the day and night. And that ultimately governs our own, what's called our circadian rhythm, which is our sort of our day-night cycles. That governs our hormones, our energy levels, our neurotransmitters. Everything is governed through that. So the big problem starts when we live the indoor lifestyles. We're not outdoors, so we're not really getting much exposure to the natural light spectrum. So when we're indoors, and if we're using a lot of artificial LED lights, it's not really aligning to the natural light cycle. So outdoor, we have full spectrum light, which has got relatively equal amounts of all the colors from blue through to red, also infrared and UV. Now, blue light's very important. It serves a purpose as part of that full spectrum light. It is what keeps you awake. It keeps you alert. It makes sure it regulates your mood and energy levels as well. So things like serotonin and dopamine are heavily influenced through the use or through the exposure of blue light. So ultimately, a solution is not to block all blue light, because you'll start to interrupt those kind of like hormone pathways. So during the daytime, we should be exposed to these frequencies of light, but we should be exposed to them with all the other frequencies like we get outdoors. Now, indoors, all we do is we get very, very high levels of blue light because it's energy efficient through our LED lights, which is so blue is actually perceived through LED lights, which is a very bright white light, not necessarily a blue light, but it's very, very void of all the red, the yellow, the orange, and the infrared light. And why that's a problem is that it will keep you awake and alert, but it will start actually overstimulate you because it's not very balanced. And it will actually start to cause a lot of problems around like oxidative stress, damage, cellular breakdown. Because it is a short wavelength, it is next to the UV spectrum. So UV in isolation is also very damaging to us as well in isolation. So blue light in isolation has a similar effect. But out in nature, it's actually balanced with the red and the infrared light, which is actually the opposite. It's like the long wavelengths, which are very restorative and regenerative and healing. So like nature always has like balance, but we interrupt nature with our light sources. Same as we come indoors, we don't have those spectrums, which causes a whole bunch of problems. And when it comes to the evening, if we kind of look at like natural light sources, well, the sun sets, so there is no blue light in the environment. Natural light sources will be fire. Fire emits red, well, it emits a lot of infrared because there's a lot of heat that comes off it, and red, yellow, and orange light. But all the lights we turn on in our home are like essentially telling your biology that it's solar noon. There's like a ton of blue light in them. So your ancestral brain, which has been developed over like hundreds of thousands of years, has not caught up with the rapid advancement of what we've done into our environment, which has put all these artificial lights in. So your biology does exactly what it's supposed to do. It receives in these light signals, which are very, very high amounts of blue light, and it sort of takes it in and goes, wow, the sun must be up, because the only time in the day when there's high amounts of blue light is kind of like during the daytime. So then it does exactly what it's supposed to do. It takes in those light signals. It tells your body to secrete a lot of adrenaline and cortisol, because you don't want to be asleep during the daytime. You want to be awake and alert, and that's exactly what it does. But what it does is it now starts to very much confuse the brain, because it's supposed to operate on a 24-hour cycle where you've got a certain amount of hours in the daytime and certain amounts in the nighttime where it's dark and there is no blue light. But now it's kind of getting these mixed signals. Was like, well, hold on, when's like it's supposed to continue to run through this 24-hour cycle, but when's the nighttime coming down? And well, we don't have it because the sun sets and we turn all these lights on in our home. So we're artificially just keeping ourselves stimulated, artificially keeping ourselves awake, and then wondering why it's, either we can't fall asleep or we can't stay asleep. And that's because ultimately your cortisol and melatonin cycles are dysregulated. Because in the ideal world, when the sun sets, you don't get exposure to any blue light anymore. And what that does is it allows the cortisol pathway is no longer stimulated. So cortisol starts to drop, becomes at its lowest point. And when cortisol drops, our melatonin can rise, which is our sleep hormone, which helps us actually go to sleep and stay asleep for longer. Not only does it do that, but it's a very, very potent antioxidant in the body, which is cleaning out free radicals. It's anti-cancer, it's anti-inflammatory, it's all these things that we need while we're resting and repairing. So high melatonin is very, very important for a state of optimal health over the long term. But if we can't actually, if our melatonin has been significantly suppressed, then studies can show like 80 to 90% of your melatonin is suppressed through blue light exposure at night. You're really not setting yourself up for a good state of health over the long term.
No, yeah, we have to, like, I tell my clients, I'm like, blocking artificial light is literally cancer prevention. Like, that's what I say, because you are preserving your melatonin levels. And a lot of people, like, what they do is, right, if we think about it, they come home, they turn on the lights, they watch the TV, right, all the things, and those lights are on till 10, 12, 11, like it's late. So by the time their melatonin is actually kicking, because I think it takes 4 hours of darkness, it is way, way late. So of course they're still tired in the morning, right? Because they just the whole thing is off. They've kind of like phase shifted it, right? Because the body is literally melatonin got secreted so much later than it should have been. And then they like can't get up, and then they're groggy, and then they're like, they don't feel good. They have no energy in the morning. I'm like, this is why. Like, this is why you can't get up. It's such a it's good.
That's right. And what do they do to that? They feel groggy. So what do? They chug back a cup of like coffee in the morning, caffeine. And what does that do? To jumpstart their cortisol because they're so tired.
Yeah, because their cortisol melatonin patterns are disrupted, or they look at their phone. That will wake them up too. That'll also do it. It'll jolt the cortisol up as well, and they won't feel good though. Like, you won't feel good, by doing those things. That's the point. So I mean, it's so imperative to be blocking blue light at night. And I know you also have different lighting that you can use in your homes. You have the orange bulbs and the red bulbs, which is what we use in our home at night. We use orange and red. We don't use blue light at night. Like, it's really trying to mimic. And I still wear blue blockers because I have neighbors and they're not caring about this like I am, unfortunately. And the street lamps and all the things, right? So it's not only important to use these orange and red bulbs at night to preserve our melatonin, but also to wear blue blockers as well. So
yeah.
Yeah,
the more you started learning about light and how different forms of light affect us, when and how did red light or photobiomodulation and healing with red light come along in your journey, Daniel?
Yeah, well, a few years later, because initially what I was looking at is like, okay, like, these incorrect wavelengths at the incorrect time of the day, or, not in balance, are causing a lot of these like problems, like I said, like around circadian rhythm disruption to like damage to my eyes, eye strain, headaches through oxidative stress and cell damage. And then I started thinking, well, a lot of the problem is not only getting too much of these incorrect frequencies, it's not getting enough of the beneficial frequencies. So the indoor lifestyle really doesn't allow us to get the full suite of like the non-visible or the longer wavelengths such as red and near infrared light. So windows block out a large portion of infrared light. So even if you're sitting in the ultimately naturally lit environment in your home, you're still actually really not getting enough exposure to infrared light. And so that's where I started to look at photobiomodulation and looking at the research on that, and it really fit the sort of the umbrella of what we were doing in our mission around like how can we manipulate or use light for wellness, right? And so red light therapy or photobiomodulation really fits that mission for us. And so we're sort of going, well, it's using very specific, wavelengths of red and infrared light to support the body to heal and function optimally. So, with the mitochondrial stimulation through energy production, right? So that was a kind of a big turning point as well, and go, this can really not, you could dial in your light environment, but how can we actually then really upregulate the body's ability to function at its optimal self through bringing in significant portions of these wavelengths of light we're just really not getting enough exposure to.
Right, because we're meant to have exposure to infrared literally all day long, because we're meant to be outside, and we'd be outside in the sun, and we'd be getting infrared all day long, and red and infrared. We're really meant for that. And then a lot of times, like you said, when we're indoors, say you have to work in an office or something like that, you have to be inside, the modern glass, the lighting, all's void of it. So we're completely red light deficient, red and infrared light deficient. So if you are somebody who has to live in that kind of modern world, well, this is like a modern device that can support you and give you those light frequencies that will support your mitochondria, make more subcellular melatonin, make more energy production, make more exclusion zone water. It does all the things, right? So, I mean, I don't use red light when I'm outside a lot, but when I'm not, then I do, because especially through winter here, I live in New York in winter. Yeah, I supplement with red light therapy because I can't be outside as much because it's cold, right? So it's like a great time to use it. So I think that red light therapy is an amazing tool and resource that we have that can really support health.
Yeah, I agree. And it's kind of twofold with the red light therapy. It's what you said there is like the modern lifestyle. If you can't get outside enough, you definitely know you're being like deprived of these frequencies of light. But then it can also be used in a way, because it is kind of a little bit different to the sun, where it's actually really taking very specific frequencies and magnifying them beyond what you'd actually even get outside, which can really, really help in situations where you need that extra boost in those frequencies to upregulate the ATP production to help with performance recovery, inflammation. If you've got chronic conditions, pain, all that sort of stuff, it can upregulate beyond what the sun can do as well. So there's situations like that where it's very, very beneficial, regardless of one's like light environment, where someone might be chronically sick and you really need to get their cellular energy boosted up, to a state. And that's where I think it's so powerful, and it's got such a wide use case, like application. And that's why I think it's becoming quite popular, where people are really starting to go, okay, I'm kind of getting to a point where I think, the conventional system of just like trying to use drugs and band-aid things, where like we can actually go, how do we actually support our body to actually function the way it's supposed to, and it can actually heal itself and put itself into a state of optimal health.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. That's a really good point, because there are situations where even if you do have an optimal environment, still using it as like a therapeutic dose can be really, really supportive for certain individuals, depending on what the condition is. So I like that. That's a really good point. Yeah.
How do you address flicker and the non-native EMFs and all the things that some people now are becoming more discerning about, with there becoming a lot more different companies offering, red light devices?
Yeah, sure. So flicker's a pretty easy one to deal with these days. I mean, a lot of the issue with flicker is just using poor drivers, LED drivers in the devices, where, because essentially what we're doing we're taking in a current source from our mains electricity, which is an AC or alternating current mains power, which is pulsing, right? So it's pulsing either 50 or 60 hertz, which means 100 to 120 times a second the light's turning off and on. So a poorly or cheaply made device, they will use drivers that are taking in that light source to then deliver to the actual LEDs, and it's not modulating that in any way. A really good one will take that in, it will convert it into a direct current source and give it a DC current to the light, where it's just a constant light source. And then, I mean, you might ask why that's important. So, and that, again, I like taking it back to like light sources in nature. There is no such thing as flickering light in nature. The sun doesn't turn its pulse itself on and off. It's a constant light source. So, and what that does is when you might not visually see the flicker. In most situations, you don't, because it's turning off and on faster than your eyes can actually see. Your brain is actually still recognizing this flicker, and it causes neurological stress. It's a stressor to the brain. It's flicking on and off. So what that does is raise your cortisol and cause a lot of headaches, eye strain, irritability, sort of thing, where it's like your brain's working overtime to go, well, hold on, why does this visually keep turning off and on very quickly? So we should be, particularly when we're looking to use lighting or a light source for like healing and restorative and to be relaxing and put you in a state of like healing, you don't want to be putting the body into a state of stress while you're doing that. And so it's like a big thing around that, is like, and a lot of people sort of potentially aren't aware of it, and it's one of those things like, well, if I can't see it, it's not a problem, right?
All you have to do is put your phone on slow-mo and record it, and you will see it. And it's funny, I just posted a video yesterday on my Instagram because I was going through old videos, and I had a video on slow-mo that I must have recorded by mistake because I was trying to get rid of things. And it is my son years and years ago, and we had LEDs back then, and you could see the flicker. So how hard, like, I don't have those in my house anymore, but I was like, wow, this is like, it's so intense. I'm like, how do you people, like, how do we live with that? Like, our body literally, even though we don't see it, we are sensing it, and it is causing us to be in a more, uprated sympathetic nervous system,
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I mean, that test isn't foolproof though, because
Oh no.
sometimes you can actually have, so the phone test is a really, really good way to see things that have like got a really big flicker rate on them. The modulation depth between on and off is really large, so the phone will pick it up. And that's actually the worst type of flicker, but you can actually get flicker still where the phone can't pick it up. Like,
oh wow, I didn't know that.
It's actually either the hertz rate is very fast, so that's still too fast for the phone, or the modulation depth, the depth between off and on isn't as big. So, I mean, it's a really good test that anyone can do very quickly to go, is it really bad? But it's still not a complete, like, oh, I've done that and I know my light source is perfect.
Right, it's not foolproof if you do the phone test.
Yeah.
You're saying that it
You really
actually
need
is not flickering. Okay, that's good to know.
meter.
Now we need to know
meter.
how to test it in other ways.
Yeah. I mean, there's meters, essentially you need a flicker meter.
Yeah.
But then that gets expensive, and it's like, well, yeah, it's probably not really a solution for the average person just wanting to put some light bulbs in their home. And they're like, oh, well, now I need to go buy like a 1,000-watt meter to like test the light.
No, I think the better option is to just go to reputable companies like yours that you've tested, and we know that those are not going to be flickering, right? So that's like the best solution for that for the everyday person.
Yeah. And the other point you touched on was non-native EMFs, right? And that's another big problem. I mean, anything that takes in a power source will emit non-native EMFs. There's nothing you can do to stop that. So I mean, anyone that, first of all, I think a red flag is anyone that advertise like zero EMFs or like no EMFs is probably doesn't know what they're talking about either, because there is EMFs. They do exist. The conversion of taking in power from a mains power source from an AC current and converting it into DC current will cause magnetic and electric fields. But there's ways to mitigate that to make sure those fields aren't emitting at a significant distance from the device or in a significant amount quantity. So that really comes down to the quality of the internal components used. Is everything grounded inside the device? Does it have shielding around it to stop it emitting very fast? So, I mean, when we're doing our things, we really want to look at it where probably about 6 inches from the device, we shouldn't really be getting any measurable kind of magnetic or electric fields from them. And the other one is RF, which can be caused by smart devices, right? Like, oh, you want Bluetooth and connectivity and this and that through it. It's like, well, so that's just something to be cautious of as well. It's like, it's really unnecessary, and that's even what we see in like, modern residential lighting. You want your smartphone to control like your lights. Well, I prefer not to have like many Wi-Fi routers all around my house emitting a frequency. So.
Well, we're with you on that one for sure.
So for like your face one, for your red light devices, that's the good thing, is that's why they're, I'm assuming, rechargeable, right?
Yeah, so that's because it's DC powered. So yeah, we're using a battery. So it's much easier to control the magnetic and electric fields through a low voltage DC power source. Still not foolproof though. I've seen ones where, I've actually seen some recently on a Facebook group where someone's posted of a face mask, and the magnetic fields coming off it were crazy. And I'm like, you're putting that on your face as well. It's like, well, but they had a meter, right? And they tested it, and they're just like, just trying to put a warning out there, guys. Like, make sure like what you're putting this on your face for benefits. But I think the net effect of that is you're worse off, right? Like when you're doing that sort of thing. So you just got to be very careful as well. It's not always okay, it's battery operated, so it's gonna be safe. There's still things around how that power is delivered into the light source to make sure it's done well.
Wow. Yeah, that's really good to know. You have to make sure that you're getting from a really quality, reputable, good source company who's testing for these things, right? Who's testing to make sure their products are what they say they are, right? Um, I was going to ask you that question about, like, say, a red light therapy device that plugs in versus a red light therapy device. I know you just came out with a new one. Maybe it's not new, I'm not sure, but I know you have one there that, it's chargeable, right? So you can like take it with you and go, which is kind of nice. Like you can travel with it if you have to go. Like it's very convenient use as well, but it's also, you're able to put that directly onto the skin, right? As opposed to one that's a plug-in that we want to keep, that distance of, I think it's what, 10 inches, 12 inches or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And that is that because of the non-native EMFs, is that why the direct skin contact can be with these battery operated ones or rechargeable ones, or is that a different mechanism? And you can speak to.
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, the few things to unpack there. The reason we actually recommend the sort of 6 to 12 inches from a panel, EMFs is one of them. It's really not the major thing. It's actually because of the way the panels work, they're very high powered. You actually get the optimal kind of like blend of light and power or radiance at that distance. So right close up, it's actually because of there's so many different LEDs, there's a lot of LEDs that kind of reaches a point of optimal when that's actually at a distance, not right close up. And then but then the other thing is also, I probably wouldn't recommend putting it on you. There's a lot of fans and stuff. There's a lot of electronics running in those devices because they are very high powered by design. That's the whole idea of them. They're designed to cover like a large portion of full body. So you've got to sort of the standard of the distance to achieve that. Now the portable device is a little handheld. That's more of a really targeted kind of device that you can kind of say target the sore elbow or target your thyroid and stuff like that. So you don't have any concerns around EMFs because, again, battery operated, DC powered. There are some benefits around. So there's been a bit of research looking at kind of like direct skin contact versus non-skin contact. And what they find is when you're kind of at a distance, when light hits the skin, a large portion of it reflects off the skin as opposed to kind of goes and gets absorbed. So there's a lot of, I'd say, light inefficiency from non-contact red light therapy. But the benefit is like the power or the radiance or the light intensity is like significantly higher. So it kind of offsets it. But when you've got a small little battery operated device, like it's got no fans, it's got a very small drivers, it's not consuming a lot of energy, so it's not as emitting as much energy. Using it on the skin contact is very, very beneficial because the light, you don't have a lot of inefficiency of light wastage through reflection. It's going directly into the skin. So the lower, it is lower powered, but it can be offset through using direct skin contact method. And it can be more targeted. So yeah, you're not really trying to achieve, I've got this small device and I'm wanting to treat my whole body. You'll be there for like a very, very long time to do it. So
couple days.
Right. So you kind of need both. You need a regular panel, and you also need, it's nice to have one of those. Like, I mean, you can use them for, any like strains and sprains and like all kinds of things, right? So it's nice to have that, like when you like have a physical pain, like to put that direct contact right on it, or a skin issue or something that is nice. It's kind of nice to have both. Yeah, that's like the ideal world, right? Yeah, both devices and you could use them.
yeah.
Now,
Daniel, where do you see the future of red light? What's on your horizon as far as developmental projects and inquiries you're doing scientifically, research? Where are you going?
Yeah, I mean, what we're really starting to look at, like the industry has evolved a lot over the last 5 years. What started was kind of like, oh yeah, like you kind of use like 660 nanometer red and 850 near infrared. It's kind of old thinking in science. It's like started that way because like one company started doing it, right, and everyone just did it, and it was like, oh well, that's just the accepted norm. And it's like, well, actually, is it? Like, is that the best like blend of these like wavelengths. So what we're really starting to look at now is like, is there like not more beneficial frequencies, but is there a better blend where we're starting to create a more broader range of the frequencies that can start to be more like closer to like what we get outdoors in nature, but it's still in this photobiomodulation banding of like frequencies where they are, it is actually working through those pathways, because you can go too far in infrared light. Like if you go into the mid and far infrared, it's not going to have these same biological effects. It's going to primarily cause heat. So it's going to be absorbed by the water in your body, not the mitochondria. So, but what we're really starting to look at is like, okay, so like if we look at our panels today, we put like 5 different wavelengths in them. We're quite happy with that blend, but we're just like, I mean, there's a lot of research. There's like 8,500 studies on photobiomodulation, right? So it's like
it's
a lot to look at. And we're also just trying to like sort of break down like what are the different blends of light, and like there's certain situations where there's a more optimal blend of different frequencies of light for this certain condition or this use case, and sort of trying to like split them up and going, can we create a more simple solution for the end user where they're like, okay, well, I'm trying to do this, so I should ultimately kind of like set the device up to do this. It's not as simple as it sounds, though. Like, I mean, I've seen some sort of attempts at this, but like I think it's over simplification where they're like, oh, well, here's the skin health mode, and you're like, well, okay, hold on a minute, like where did this research come from? That's the so it's
you got like the wrinkle mode, the eye healing mode, the cellulite mode. I'm sure, that would be nice.
And it's like, but then it gets to the point where it's like confusion, right? Because it's like, oh, hold on, like I've got inflammation and I've got skin problems, so like, do I do the inflammation mode or the skin mode, or do I do that? What, like, hold on, like, and then it's like you run the risk of like people then overdosing, right? Where they're just like trying to do all these different modes, and so
that's a good question about the overdosing. What are your thoughts on that biphasic, response and the overdosing and all of that? Can you overdose on red light? What are your thoughts? I'm curious, since you're in this field.
Yeah, I mean, like it's a relatively safe modality, right? Like, yes, you can. It'd be very difficult to overdose to the point of having serious side effects, but there is a biphasic response where more is not always better. There's an optimal range and a zone, but like I would say, it's not going to cause, like, what you'll see is probably just you probably won't see it being as effective. If you suddenly start doing an hour of red light therapy a day, it's like, well, it's probably actually the sweet spot was way back over this side. It's not really causing you any problems, but it's not really giving you the same benefit. So, and that's what we always talk about when customers are like, oh, well, like I'm getting all these benefits. Should I do it twice as much? It's like, probably not. Like, is it working for you? Like, but I mean, it's an interesting industry because there's still a lot of unknowns. Even the world's experts still can't quite nail down like this is like, we just know it works, and we know like some basic parameters to use to see beneficial responses. But like, you got to sit there and go, well, yes, we saw beneficial like benefits using these frequencies at this time. It was power, but what about all the other options we could have done? Could have achieved a slightly better outcome. It's a very difficult one and that's why it's very difficult as a company creating these products to tell everyone wants the solution. Like, what's the, I've got this problem. Like, and it's very difficult. That's why we're like, here's some guidelines, but you've just really got to try it out and see what works for you. Like, don't try and change everything at once. Like, okay, try that. If you're having a positive response, like, stick with it. Like, and then you could like start to like just change some parameters. But ultimately, it is a relatively, it's a non-invasive treatment. It's taking in these wavelengths of light is very, very safe. It's very, very difficult to overdose to a point where you're going to start to cause like detrimental effects to you. You need to spend a significant portion of time in front of the device.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm all about efficiency. Like I'm like, you don't need that long. Like with a high-powered device, you know, a 10-minute treatment is really, really good. 10 minutes each side of something you've kind of done. You know, doing 40 minutes is not gonna.
It's
It's
not
just gonna
necessary. Yeah. You just,
take more time.
you've already gotten the benefit. It's good enough.
Yeah.
Like, I think we do live in this society though, where like more is better, right? Like, so a lot of people will do that. And like, it's just, small amounts. Like the little bit goes a long way, I think, in a lot of things that we don't realize, right? This small dose can really be really, really supportive. So I love that.
Frequency medicine, just like homeopathy, it's not about the quantity always, it's about the frequency. So
Exactly. Exactly. I love it. I love that. Yeah. So Daniel has like all kinds of wonderful things, that you can go check out on his website, Block Blue Light. I know you have, the blue blocking glasses, and you have all kinds of lighting and light bulbs, and you have the red light therapy devices, like all the things. My little favorite, like little thing is really this, I know it sounds silly, but it's so beneficial. And I found so many uses for it. I've taken it in my shower. I keep one beside my bed in case one of the kids get up, or I have to walk to somewhere in the like early morning when it's still dark out. I like use it as a flashlight to navigate my way. I mean, I take it when I travel. It's such a like a little nifty little thing that Heather recommended to me, I don't know, a year ago. And I'm like, I need like a million of these and never not to have one. So like it's awesome. So that's really cool. And I know Heather has a couple of your things too that she uses, and I know a couple of clients that I've recommended your red light therapy devices to, and that's gone really well. So I know that your company is doing a really good job, and I see it supporting people. And I know that you came to this through like such adversity, right? And I know that that really was hard, but look at what it came to be, right? Like you came to have this company, and you're helping so many people, and through our struggles, we come to something great a lot of times, right? So, I mean, it's a beautiful story, and I appreciate you sharing it with us. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. I was, very enjoyed myself. I always love to, a big thing for me is education first. So I always love to be able to come and share my story and try and help people understand. And hopefully there's some takeaways that people can have. And it's not necessarily needing to buy our products, but it's just at least having some awareness of the problem to start with.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Anything we didn't touch on that you wanted to mention?
I think we covered everything. The only one thing I've mentioned is just on our website, we've got like a lot of information, but a lot of blog posts.
Yeah.
We've got well over 100 different blog posts on all things around different topics around light and red light therapy and all different situations. We'll continue to create articles over the years that should be quite, taking kind of like more complex science and try to drill it down so the average person can read and understand.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So go check that out, everybody, and look at all the research, and you can start learning. And yeah, well, thank you so much, Daniel. This has been so much fun. We really appreciate you coming on.
yep, thank you
No
so much.
worries.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.